Hello, this presentation will discuss mid-review cycle meetings. I am Captain Lakeeta Carr with the United States Public Health Service, and also joining me is Lieutenant Commander Nicholas Daniel with the United States Public Health Service. I'm a regulatory project manager, and Lieutenant Commander Daniel is a team leader. We both work in the Division of Project Management within the Office of Generic Drugs at the FDA. The learning objectives for today's meeting include defining the mid-review cycle meeting, reviewing the goals of the mid-review cycle meeting categories, the meeting agenda, how mid-review cycle meetings are scheduled, how mid-review cycle meetings are conducted, how we reschedule and or cancel mid-review cycle meetings, the timeline as far as an overview of how mid-review cycle meetings are conducted, tips for applicants, fictional cases, and we also have a couple of challenge questions for you guys. The mid-review cycle meeting defined. The mid-review cycle meeting is a 30-minute telephone conference held at the midpoint of the first review cycle for an ANDA. The goals for the mid-review cycle meeting are to convey to applicants key issues or concerns that were identified during the abbreviated new drug application review. Also, to ask applicants clarifying questions about the submission. And then lastly, to outline recommended next steps for applicants if applicable. There are currently two mid-review cycle meeting categories. One is for complex ANDAs, and the second is for competitive generic therapy ANDAs. With regard to complex ANDAs, as described in the Generic Drug User Fee Amendment GDUFA 2 commitment letter, FDA offers mid-review cycle meetings to applicants who were granted pre-NDA meetings. For example, product development meetings and or pre-submission meetings. With regard to competitive generic therapy ANDAs, per the competitive generic therapy guidance, FDA may offer an MRCM for CGT designated ANDAs. For complex product examples, we have a few examples for you guys. For active ingredients, we look at peptides, complex mixtures, natural source products. For formulations, we look at liposomes and emulsions. For routes of delivery, we look at locally acting drugs such as dermatological products and complex ophthalmological products. For dosage forms, we look at transdermal systems and extended release injectables. We also review drug device combinations such as autoinjectors and metered dose inhalers. Other products include those that are complex or there's uncertainty concerning the approval pathway or possible alternative approach that would benefit from early scientific engagement. The mid-review cycle meeting attendees include the applicant, regulatory project managers, regulatory business process managers, discipline project managers, and the review teams involved in the ANDA review. The next section reviews how mid-review cycle meetings are scheduled. With regard to the scheduling timeline, the mid-review cycle meeting notification letter is issued about 14 days after the ANDA has been accepted for filing. And then with regard to the agenda is issued at least 7 days prior to the mid-review cycle meeting. The mid-review cycle meeting, again, the 30-minute meeting, occurs at about the midpoint plus 30 days. And then meeting minutes are issued no later than 30 days after the mid-review cycle meeting. This is an example of a mid-review cycle meeting notification letter. It will include information about the ANDA, the applicant, the date the ANDA was accepted for filing, and also it will include information about whether or not the ANDA is eligible because it's a complex MRCM or because it's a CGT MRCM. And lastly, it will include information about the date, the time, and the phone arrangements for the meeting. The meeting agenda. The meeting agenda, again, is issued no later than 7 days before the mid-review cycle meeting. In that agenda, we provide a review status update of all disciplines. And in general, the mid-review cycle meeting is limited to discussion items listed on the agenda. And in the agenda, here's a sample of what the cover page looks like in the agenda. And again, it's the ANDA number, the applicant's name, contact information, and then the date we received the ANDA, and then it also has the telephone conference date in there. Next, we discuss how mid-review cycle meetings are conducted. With regard to conducting the mid-review cycle meeting, the discussion is generally limited to the agenda items sent by the FDA to the applicant. Clarifying questions pertaining to the agenda items may be submitted for agency consideration prior to the mid-review cycle meeting. With regard to ad hoc clarifying questions, FDA will determine the appropriateness of responding to ad hoc questions during the telephone conference. Again, the mid-review cycle meeting is limited to 30 minutes. Rescheduling or canceling a mid-review cycle meeting. An MRCM may be rescheduled at the FDA's discretion if additional information is needed from the applicant before the mid-review cycle meeting, if there's an unsolicited amendment that changes the generic drug user fee goal date, or if there are unforeseen circumstances that arise. Applicants may choose to cancel a mid-review cycle meeting. If the meeting is canceled, please submit an administrative amendment stating that you'd like to cancel the meeting. Also, please provide as much notice as possible. Next, Lieutenant Commander Daniel will discuss the mid-review cycle meeting timeline summary.
Thank you, Captain Carr. And for our MRCM timeline summary, after an applicant submits an ANDA, the Division of Filing and Review conducts a filing assessment, at the completion of which they issue a filing acknowledgement letter. About 14 days after the filing acknowledgement letter is sent, or the ANDA is identified as CGT eligible, the RPM for the ANDA issues a meeting notification letter. And then, about 7 days prior to the MRCM, the RPM issues a meeting agenda. The MRCM will be held about 30 days after the midpoint of the review cycle. And then 30 days after the MRCM, the RPM will issue the meeting minutes. So here's some tips for ANDA applicants having mid-review cycle meetings. So if applicable, please identify any pertinent pre-ANDA meetings on your original application cover letter with your original submission. If the MRCM meeting notification letter has not been received within 3 weeks of filing acknowledgement, please contact your RPM, which will be listed on your filing acknowledgement letter. Please submit any agenda-related clarification questions through the ESG and send a courtesy copy to the RPM. Ensure appropriate representatives attend the meeting on time. And finally, please submit any cancellation requests through the ESG and send a courtesy copy to the RPM. Next, we'll discuss MRCM Performance and how the program is going so far. So MRCMs by the numbers. As discussed, MRCMs were introduced with GDUFA 2, which was implemented with the beginning of fiscal year 2018. And during that initial year, we conducted 5 complex MRCMs. For fiscal year 19, 10 complex MRCMs were conducted and 2 CGT MRCMs. And for fiscal year 20, 21 complex MRCMs were held and 15 CGT MRCMs. So as you can see, there's been a steady increase in the number of meetings held through the years. Now let's go through just 2 fictional examples of what discussions might look like during a mid-review cycle meeting. For a patch, if an applicant were to submit a topical patch of a different shape from the reference listed drug, and that shape had impact on the bioavailability of the product, that might lead to a discussion on those differences and the impact on labeling and bioequivalence. Similarly, if an applicant were to submit an application for a metered dose inhaler, there might be a discussion surrounding alternative bioequivalence approaches. So in summary, we've discussed the definition of an MRCM, the goals of MRCMs, the MRCM categories, those being complex products participating in the pre-ANDA program, as well as competitive generic therapy products. The meeting agenda, we've discussed how MRCMs are scheduled and how they're conducted. Rescheduling and canceling MRCMs. Process overview of the timeline. Some tips for applicants, as well as some fictional cases. If you have any questions about an upcoming MRCM or past MRCMs, or if you feel that your ANDA should qualify for an MRCM, please contact the respective RPM for that application. Now for some challenge questions. Challenge question 1 is, who can cancel a mid-review cycle meeting? A, the applicant, B, the FDA, C, either the applicant or the FDA, or D, neither the applicant nor the FDA. Correct. A, the applicant can cancel the mid-review cycle meeting. Challenge question number 2. Under what circumstances may an MRCM be rescheduled? A, if additional information is needed from the applicant before the MRCM. B, if an unsolicited amendment changes the goal date. C, if unforeseen circumstances arise. D, only A and B. Or E, all of the above. Correct. E, all of the above. In each of these cases, in each of these circumstances, an MRCM may be rescheduled. For some resources related to MRCMs, I would reference the GDUFA 2 commitment letter, guidance for industry, formal meetings between FDA and ANDA applicants of complex products under GDUFA, as well as guidance for industry, competitive generic therapies. And with that, I say goodbye and thank you for your time.